Good morning. My name is Farhana Kara. I'm the Executive Director of Muslim Advocates. Thank you all so much for joining us on this momentous day, the third anniversary of the President's enactment of the Muslim ban, and to hear why, more than ever, action is needed to end this bigoted ban. I now have the distinct honor and pleasure of introducing you to not only the organizer of today's press conference, but the Senate leader and champion of the No Ban Act, Senator Chris Coons.
Thank you, Farhana. Thank you all for coming out, and thank you to the dozens of colleagues from the Senate, from the House, and organizations, both civil rights organizations, faith and advocacy organizations from all across our nation who are gathering today. We are marking a somber anniversary, the third anniversary of President Trump's executive order creating the so-called Muslim ban, something that doesn't make us safer, something that isn't based on evidence, and something that tragically there are rumors he will soon expand to 7 more countries. Let me just briefly thank Congresswoman Chu for her great partnership and leadership in advancing this bill. My colleagues, Senators Durbin and Hirono and Blumenthal, who are joining us, Congresswoman Omar and Congressman Carson and Beyer and Congresswoman Jayapal, for your leadership. There are so many speakers and folks, I won't recognize all of them, but I just wanted to say it's been a joy to work with you. What other initiative could bring together Muslim advocates, the ACLU, the Leadership Conference, the National Women's Law Center, the NAACP, and frankly 400 others? An initiative that is about who we are as a nation, that is about our values, and that is about the direction that we should be taking as a nation. I'll remind you that then candidate Trump called for, and I quote, a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. His discriminatory intent was clear from the very beginning. And one of his first acts as president was to sign an executive order attempting to enact a ban on individuals from Muslim-majority countries coming to this country. As we all know, one of the few moments in the last couple of years that brought together people of all faiths, all parties, all backgrounds in denouncing a cruel action of this president was as families were being torn apart at our southern border, as parents were being divided from children in the intentional use of cruelty as a part of our immigration policy. Most Americans believe that that family separation policy ended. It has not. And as we will hear forcefully today, it has not only not ended, but there are thousands of American families that, because of the so-called Muslim ban, continue to be separated today. The idea that somehow our courts ultimately upheld that ban has offended my sense of justice and that of so many of my colleagues. That initial executive order was overturned. A second attempt, overturned. A third attempt ultimately upheld on June 26, 2018 in a narrow 5-4 ruling. And our whole effort in introducing this legislation and trying to move it forward is to say our Supreme Court got it wrong. The waiver process that they relied upon in their opinion is a complete fiction. And the reality is that President Trump's Muslim ban has separated tens of thousands of American citizens, husbands and wives, parents and children, ailing grandparents stuck in countries around the world from Yemen to Iran because of this ban. It's a ban that was also not based in any detailed or factual analysis as it should be. President Trump is threatening, according to press reports, to expand this ban further to the nations of Belarus and Eritrea, Kyrgyzstan, Myanmar, Nigeria, Sudan, and Tanzania. Nigeria, to pick one example, has the largest economy and largest population on the continent of Africa, has one of the largest African diaspora populations in the United States. Why on earth would we choose to separate ourselves from this nation, a federal republic, a democracy that is our partner in security work around the region and the world? There's a popular political transition towards democracy underway in Sudan, where citizens recently rose up and overthrew a long-standing dictator. Why would we make it more difficult for the people of Sudan to complete that political transition? I could cite, obviously, 5 more examples. But if we make decisions like this based in law, they should be based in fact, not in prejudice, not in populism, and not in discrimination. So, in closing, I question whether President Trump has thought through at all the harmful consequences of not just extending but expanding this senseless ban, and I'm grateful for my colleagues in joining in pushing back against this action. We have no other answer to this shameful policy but to pass the No Ban Act, which will amend the underlying law, repeal the existing travel bans, and fix the hole in the heart of American immigration law that was created by this ungrounded decision. Only by getting this act passed and signed into law will we be certain that future presidents won't act based on fear, prejudice, and a lack of grounding in real information. Our immigration policies should be based on the best of America, not the worst of America. And I'm so grateful to the partners who stand here with me today and for the great announcement Speaker Pelosi has just made that suggests a real and positive path forward. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's now my honor to introduce Congresswoman Judy Chu of California, a true partner in advancing this landmark civil rights legislation. Thank you.
It is sobering to be here on the 3rd anniversary of the Muslim ban, but it is also so important for us to be here on the 3rd anniversary of the Muslim ban. And it's so heartening for me to see so many people out here today to make sure that this Muslim ban ends. I particularly want to thank Senator Coons for his tremendous leadership on the Senate side and all the senators and House members and groups that are here today. 3 years ago, Donald Trump introduced the first Muslim ban. Today, with 214 House co-sponsors and 39 Senate co-sponsors and 480 groups that have endorsed this bill, we are closer than ever to ending it. I've been in close contact with my colleagues on the House Judiciary Committee. I'm proud to say they support this bill as well, and they are committed to having a markup on this bill. And in fact, it is the first priority, and we believe it will be in February. We are then very, very hopeful that there will be a House vote on this bill. And with the president confirming that he wants to expand this ban to even more countries, now is the time to act. That's because the Muslim ban has been a disaster from the start. It has nothing to do with improving American security. In fact, we are less secure now, and everything to do with promoting bigotry and xenophobia. The only purpose and the only real impact of the Muslim ban has been to keep families apart, as with Rashad, who lives in Los Angeles, not far from my district. Rashad moved to the United States thanks to the sacrifices of his Iranian-born parents who gave up everything so that he could live a better life. But until the election of Donald Trump, they didn't know that this would also mean giving up being able to even visit their son. For years, Rashad's parents have submitted to the careful vetting required each time they needed a visa to visit America. And they were approved 3 times. But now, thanks to the Muslim ban, they are suddenly considered a threat, and they are prohibited from being able to meet their new grandchild. This leaves Rashad and his wife feeling like second-class citizens, part of a group unable to see their families simply because of their religion. That pain is the legacy of the Muslim ban, and it is deliberate because the truth is America has one of the strongest and best vetting systems in the world. We have every ability to safely vet grandparents, family members, or anybody else applying for a visa. Even the Supreme Court acknowledged this. When they upheld the president's ability to issue these bans, the court also required the administration to grant waivers to ensure the program had a legitimate national security interest. But despite that requirement, the State Department has approved only 10% of the applicants. That is appalling, and it makes the waiver process a joke. All of that is why, in addition to repealing all 3 Muslim bans, the No Ban Act requires the president to demonstrate an actual threat before issuing such a ban. And that means if the president believes our existing vetting system is not working, he would have to demonstrate that the 90% of an entire country, which happens to be majority Muslim, is too dangerous to be here. And that's why we need the No Ban Act. I'm in awe of the support that we built already, and I'm very optimistic that our vote will take place soon in the House. It is essential that we take away the president's power to put prejudice into policy before more countries and more families are impacted by this hateful ban. And now, it is my honor to introduce the incredible senator from Illinois, Senator Dick Durbin.
Thanks, Judy Chu. Most Americans believe in border security. I do. Most Americans think we should do everything in our power to keep dangerous people from coming into our country. I do too. But when you take a look at the Muslim travel ban, you realize that it is not grounded in national security and keeping us safe. It is grounded in prejudice and paranoia. In December of 2015, then presidential candidate Donald Trump first called for, quote, total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. The next day, he justified it by citing one of the darkest moments in our nation's history, when President Roosevelt rounded up Japanese Americans, forcing them into internment camps during World War II. Then, 3 years ago today, within a week of becoming president, Donald Trump put that ugly rhetoric into action and issued the first version of the Muslim travel ban. We remember what followed, don't we? Images of desperate families and frantic lawyers trying to make sense out of that madness in the airports of our country like O'Hare. Senator Tammy Duckworth and I requested an investigation by the Inspector General of the Department of Homeland Security, which documented the chaotic implementation of this law. Initially, the federal courts were on our side, stepped in and enjoined the ban. But then, thanks to Senator Mitch McConnell's unstinting efforts to hold a Supreme Court seat open for President Trump, Neil Gorsuch and 4 other conservative jurists joined together to uphold the ban in 2018. In her dissent to that case, Justice Sotomayor walked through a history of President Trump's anti-Muslim rhetoric and concluded that the ban was, quote, driven primarily by anti-Muslim animus. She also noted the effects of the ban, saying, and I quote, it had deleterious effects on our higher education system, national security, health care, artistic culture, and the nation's technology industry and overall economy. There are heartbreaking situations which we're all aware of, and Judy Chu just spoke of one in her own home state. Let me tell you one in Illinois. Masood Abdi is a lawful permanent resident in the United States. He lives in Savoy, which is a downstate community desperately in need of health care. He works 12 hours a day in a clinic. He's hoping soon to get his medical license in this country, as he did in Iran. Unfortunately, his wife of 7 years is stuck in Iran, unable to come to the United States because of the Trump travel ban. They've been married since 2013. They haven't been able to live together here. Now, even though he has a green card and it's finally available for his wife, the travel ban stops her from coming. I want him to be a licensed doctor, and I want him to serve our state, particularly downstate, where he's desperately needed in our nation. To do that, though, it's hard to ask this man to be separated from his wife for long periods of time and even years. Congress has to step in to address this. I'm happy to join Senator Chris Coons, Mazie Hirono, Dick Blumenthal, and my House colleagues and friends of other organizations here. We have all seen the devastation this travel ban has brought. It does not speak well of America. It speaks of an administration that is guided by prejudice and hatred. At this point, I'd be happy to introduce my colleague, Senator Mazie Hirono of Hawaii.
Thank you.
Senator.
Aloha, everyone. It's very important that we all continue to stand together fighting this president. You know, every time he does something, there are dozens of lawsuits that have to be filed to protect our rights, our privileges, our protections. And yes, 3 years ago, he instituted this Muslim ban, which I'm proud to say the state of Hawaii was the first to challenge. But this is all part of this president's virulent anti-immigration and anti-immigrant agenda. So you have the Muslim ban, you have the separation of children at the border, you have family detentions with no end in sight. And as I've said before, every day I think Steve Miller and others in his administration figure out new ways to hurt immigrants in our country. So you've heard my colleagues, I'm proud to stand with them and with all of you, talking about the harm that was brought by the Muslim ban, and to go to the Supreme Court and hear their decision in Trump versus Hawaii, where they upheld the president's right or power to do this ban, it just brought up to me that the Supreme Court got it wrong in Korematsu, and they got it wrong once again. And that's why we need to continue to stand together, because this is a president who truly believes that he can do anything he wants under Article 2 of the Constitution. And who will stop him if not us? That's why we're all here. Thank you. I think the next person is going to be my colleague, Dick Blumenthal. He and I serve on the Judiciary and Armed Services Committee, and we're sort of like partners in crime, so to speak, right? So there you go.
Partners in justice.
Partners in justice, that's right. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Senator Hirono, Senator Durbin, Senator Coons. Please delete the word crime from but I really want to salute our House colleagues who are here today, and Congresswoman Chu and all of the groups and individuals who are going to speak today with their personal stories and are here so courageously. You know, this No Ban Act gives us the opportunity to really reclaim America, to reclaim American values. And I think this issue is personal to all of us, really. Certainly to me. My dad came here in 1935 from Germany to escape persecution. I thought of him a lot yesterday because we commemorated throughout Connecticut and the country the 75th year after the liberation of Auschwitz. My dad came here to escape the Holocaust. He was alone, 17 years old. He spoke no English. He knew virtually no one. And he had not much more than the shirt on his back. And today, under this kind of Trump administration policy, he would have been rejected and sent back to his death. America opened its arms to him, as we must do to asylum seekers and refugees in the great tradition of America. And I often think about what my dad would say about the Muslim ban and the anti-immigrant, anti-refugee policies of this administration. Nobody loved America more than my dad. And I think of how sad and ashamed he would be to see America abandon the great tradition of the Statue of Liberty, which he saw when he came to this country. And by the way, to be critical of the Trump administration is not to be anti-patriotic or anti-American. The great tradition of America is to be critical of a specific leader or government when it is wrong. That's to be American. And this act gives us the opportunity to say to the Trump administration, you must stop this unwise, unconstitutional, un-American policy of racial discrimination, no matter what the race, of anti-religious discrimination, no matter what the religion. Any kind of immigration policy must be based on fact, not prejudice and bigotry. And so the Trump travel ban, I think, will be regarded by history in much the same way as we now view Korematsu, an aberration, a disgraceful and shameful aberration in the tradition of America, which is to welcome refugees and asylum seekers, no matter what their religion, no matter what their race, because we are the greatest nation in the history of the world because of our diversity and because we welcome people who are escaping persecution, much as this country welcomed my dad in 1935. I'm honored to be here today with my colleagues and to introduce now another champion of this bill, Congresswoman Omar from Minnesota.
Thank you, Senator. It's great to be here with partners of justice. I am thankful to all of you. I am extremely thankful to Senator Coons and Congresswoman Chu and the Muslim advocates for their leadership on this issue. And everyone else who's standing here, who has built a movement for us to be able to uplift all of the voices that are impacted by the Muslim ban and all of the discriminatory activities that are being taken against immigrants. We can't do any of this work in fighting back against the discrimination that is coming from this administration when it comes to Muslims, when it comes to immigrants, when it comes to refugees and asylum seekers, without having allies of all faiths joining us and saying this is wrong, without having allies in the civil rights space. And so I am extremely grateful for all of you. Exactly 3 years ago, Trump achieved his stated campaign goal of banning a group of people. And since the ban first went into effect, it has deferred dreams, it's separated families, and it's deprived people of life-saving health care and blocked access to education. Trump doesn't just want a border wall. He's creating an invisible wall, keeping out people around the world based solely on their religion. That is why we will keep fighting until we finally are able to repeal this Muslim ban and put this hateful policy in the dustbin of history where it belongs. I am so grateful to hear today from Speaker Pelosi that we will be able to mark up this bill and bring it to a House vote. It will restore hope to many people like myself who come from many of the countries that are on this Muslim ban, who are separated from their loved ones, from their families, from the opportunity to share a birth with their grandmother, who might be excited to hold that newborn, who are being kept from that funeral, people who are being kept from joining in a wedding celebration. So this is an opportunity for us to restore hope in the American dream, in an America where there is inclusion, where our values of diversity are celebrated. And I remind my colleagues that even when we get this Muslim ban overturned, this fight doesn't end, because these policies, long after they are gone, will have left a stain. And that stain is going to be in the hearts and the minds of so many people. And so we will have to collectively continue to fight to make sure that we are cleansing hearts and minds and reminding people that here in the United States, the values that unite us are about fighting for basic human rights. They are about upholding civil liberties. They are about caring for one another as neighbors. They are about fighting for each other. So I thank you all for being here, and thank you all for being committed to fighting for justice. Thank you. And now I introduce my big brother, the Dean of the Muslim Caucus, Congressman Andre Carson from Indiana.
Thank you, Ilhan. Whenever I see Ilhan, not only is she a phenomenal leader, it feels like I'm hugging Tinkerbell. So want to thank Representative Omar for that kind. she and Rashida pick on me a lot, so I want to thank Representative Omar. Thanks to Senator Coons for organizing the press conference today. Thank you to my colleague, friend, and neighbor, Congresswoman Chu, to our colleagues from both the House and the Senate, and all of the community stakeholders who have been a part of this wonderful effort, especially Muslim advocates. I don't believe it's a coincidence that the Trump administration is expected to announce a new and expanded Muslim ban just as we've reached the 3rd anniversary of the original ban. I don't believe it is a coincidence that new countries added to the ban have significant Muslim populations, and they are also African nations, places the president has already denigrated in some of the most vulgar and offensive ways. The president is enacting a very dangerous white nationalist agenda, and the Muslim ban is its cornerstone. As a Muslim and African American, it pains me to witness this low moment for our great country. But we know that history will judge this policy for what it is: bigotry, plain and simple. America once deported Irish immigrants, then banned Chinese immigrants, then banished Japanese Americans who were interned during World War II. And today, it's our Muslim brothers and sisters facing similar injustices. So this agenda is nothing new. Thankfully, there have always been bold, principled Americans who took action against these policies. And today, we must continue to follow their lead. That's why Congress must act now to pass the No Ban Act, so we can end this Muslim ban and make sure history no longer repeats itself in this way. Thank you. I'd now like to introduce my great colleague from the Commonwealth of Virginia, my friend Congressman Don Beyer.
I'm from Virginia, and in 1786, Thomas Jefferson wrote, and the General Assembly passed the religious statute of religious freedom, and that then became the basis of our Second Amendment, or the First Amendment rights of religious freedom. But today's a sad day, 1,095 days since the Muslim ban, and now we're hearing that the president may expand it to at least 7 more countries. It's too cynical or too calculated to think that he might announce it today on the same day as the original ban. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Stephen Miller deserves to be fired. Only the white nationalist brain of someone like Stephen Miller can be behind an expansion of an already egregiously hateful policy. I still believe that banning whole countries centrally violates the Immigration and Nationality Act. I believe the president cannot willfully ban an entire country without cause. Whole countries do not represent any real metric or threat or cause other than xenophobia. And that's why we desperately need the No Ban Act. And I'm so grateful to Senator Coons, to Representative Chu, and others. They've been able to gather more than 250 members of the Congress to support this, 400 civil rights organizations of faith, national security, community organizations, 50 immigration law professors, several private employers. Our immigration policies dictate the lives of families and the success of our employers, and virtually everyone up here is the children of the grandchildren of the great-grandchildren of immigrants. We can't treat that callously. And I stand here today, as so many of us stood at the airports 3 years ago, to expose this ban and to push for the No Ban Act consideration in the House. I now turn it over to our next esteemed speaker, Vinita Gupta, President and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Vinita Gupta, President and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, a coalition of more than 220 organizations working towards an America as good as its ideals. Our coalition is honored to support the No Ban Act. It's a decisive step forward in our fight to combat the forces of hate and bigotry in America. And I want to thank Senator Coons and Representatives Chu, Omar, Carson, and Beyer for your leadership on this crucial bill. And also thank Senators Blumenthal, Hirono, and others who have shown up, Senators Durbin, for being civil rights champions, and to Farhana Kara, Muslim advocates, and all of the leaders behind me that are standing strong against the forces of hate and bigotry. In my own life as the daughter of Indian immigrants and the wife of a Vietnamese refugee and a longtime civil rights lawyer, I have seen the profound power of our laws to advance America's promise of equal justice for all. I have also seen those in our nation's highest offices weaponize the law to tear families apart. And the Leadership Conference has been among those calling for Stephen Miller's ouster. But we recognize that Stephen Miller is not acting alone. He has been supported by an administration to sow division and to fan the flames of hate. These kinds of shameful abuses of power are why we are here this morning. The president's expansion of the Muslim ban only plunges our nation further into the grips of nativism. Let's be clear, indiscriminate profiling based on nationality, ethnicity, or religion does not make our nation more strong or more prosperous. It makes us weaker. It terrorizes and separates families, and it truly betrays our nation's highest values of justice, fairness, and inclusion. Congress must pass the Ban Act immediately, and it's heartening to hear this morning that Speaker Pelosi has said that the bill will be marked up. The Leadership Conference calls on the moral leadership from all members because the work to fight hate has to be bigger than any one of us or any political party. On this 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, we know what the policies of exclusion and racism and hatred can do when they go unwatched. We look forward to working with Congress until the day that these protections are signed into law. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce Eric Nang, a courageous leader in this fight whose story shows just how much is at stake if we don't stop this devastating policy. Eric?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Eric Nang, and I am the son of Burmese immigrants. My aunts, uncles, and cousins live in Burma, and they regularly travel to the U.S. to visit me. It's how we see each other and bridge the ocean-wide gap between us. I don't speak Burmese, and many members of my family don't speak English very well. So these visits are really the only way that we can truly express our love for one another. And now I'm worried that because of this expanded Muslim ban, we won't be able to do that anymore. When news broke last week that President Trump could add Burma to the list of Muslim banned countries, my heart sank. What had previously been a tragic but abstract crisis happening to other people was now something that could affect me and my family. But what's happening now is bigger than me. It's bigger than my family. What's happening is that the President of the United States is waging a vicious, dangerous campaign of hate against Muslims. And now my family could be a pawn in that cruel game. Throughout my life, my Asian immigrant parents drilled into my skull how lucky I am to be an American. It's heartbreaking to know that people like me and my family won't get that same chance because of something as petty and cruel and political as the Muslim ban. That's why Congress must pass the No Ban Act. America should be about embracing the huddled masses yearning to breathe free, not banning people because of their faith and nationality. So I'm here in front of Congress to urge them to stop this. Don't let the president ban my family. Contact your members of Congress today and demand that they support the No Ban Act. Thank you. And now it is my honor to introduce Fatima Goss Graves, the president and CEO of the National Women's Law Center.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nang, for your story. I'm Fatima Goss Graves. I'm president and CEO of the National Women's Law Center, and I'm here on behalf of the National Women's Law Center in solidarity with my colleagues there, with the broader Muslim community, and with all of you who have shown up to say enough is enough, who have shown up to say enough is enough with the rampant racism and bigotry that's actually fueling policy, enough with injuring our families and communities and denying a targeted group of people their fundamental rights, and enough with curbing the tide of bright, thriving talent eager to contribute to this great country. The ban is an attempt to scam the American people. And when I think about the rumors of an even expanded ban, you don't pass a ban under the guise of national security or imminent threats if you're waiting for an annual commemoration. There's nothing imminent about an annual commemoration. So we know better. We know what's going on here. And we know that the rhetoric really is an invitation to hate. And that's why Congress must move forward. I was so thrilled to hear the announcement that Speaker Pelosi is going to bring it to the floor to pass the No Ban Act, which would end this ban, and to say unequivocally that there is no room for hate in our policies, in our laws, in our institutions. There's no room for hate in the heart of this country. So it's time for our elected officials to join together and to represent truly our interests and our values and pass this bill. So thank you again to Muslim advocates and to Congresswoman Chu and Senator Coons and for everyone for moving this forward. And now I will welcome Rabbi Jason Kimmelman-Brock, who's the director of Bin the Ark, Jewish Action.
Thank you. The fact is we do have a national security and public safety crisis in this country, and we must act on it. But it's not the crisis that the president is touting. It's the crisis that the president is spreading. Our public safety crisis is that racism, bigotry, and xenophobia are being peddled at the highest levels of our government, which then gives license for hate-filled violence against innocent people and the most vulnerable communities in our country. It produces terror and it produces fear. And we know that this violence does not just take the form of mass shootings and vigilante murders, which we've seen so many of the past 3 years. That would be bad enough. But it also takes the form of state violence in the form of family separation and the Muslim ban. Targeting, threatening, banning of people based on their religious beliefs, national origin, remain fundamentally unjust and un-American. It cuts to the heart of who we are as a country and our very values. The president's rumored expansion of the Muslim ban only expands the betrayal of those values and the separation of tens of thousands of additional families. This president continues to follow the classic playbook of demagogues, scapegoating immigrants. We've seen this before. The so-called leaders who defend these actions, the party-loyal politicians and political prognosticators who discuss them as if they're normal, and those who retreat into the convenience of being overwhelmed or remaining silent, all bear responsibility for this evil to flourish. That's why I'm so grateful for the leaders who are pushing our nation and their colleagues instead to defend immigrants and religious minorities, for the leadership of Senators Coons and Durbin, Blumenthal, Hirono, Representatives Chu, Omar, Carson, Beyer, as well as all of their colleagues and organizations such as Muslim advocates who are leading the way. The No Ban Act is a landmark piece of civil rights legislation, not just for Muslims, but for all of this country's diverse communities. We are heartened that Speaker Pelosi has announced that the No Ban Act will be marked up and come to a floor vote. And we call on Senate Republican leadership to give this bill a hearing and vote in the Senate. And now it's my honor to introduce our next speaker, Mana Kharazi, an Iranian American who's been separated from her family because of the Muslim ban.
Hi, my name is Mana Kharazi, and I was born in Iran. My family moved me here when I was 2 as refugees. Today marks the 3rd anniversary of this devastating ban, 3 years since our communities were thrown into disarray with travelers stranded around the world. 3 years of missed funerals, loved ones absent at weddings, grandparents banned from births, and spouses living apart. I wear black today because my community is grieving, innocent lives lost to state violence. We fear for our families, knowing they can't come here, and many of us can't go there, effectively torn apart. 3 years of watching our loved ones toil through natural disasters, state repression, and a falling economy. 3 years of trying to teach our youth here that it's not okay for them to feel demonized, and that the hatred fueling this ban must not be wielded against our most vulnerable. Today, we are on the precipice of this ban being potentially expanded to tear apart and devastate more communities. I know what it means to watch my community be torn apart, fragmented until hatred becomes the driving force. We must not allow this ban to continue. Every time I feel scared, every time I feel the effects of the hatred, I remember another anniversary. Tomorrow marks 3 years when thousands of Americans flooded the airports to say no to this ban. I remember the countless advocates, the organizers, the staffers, and the champions in Congress who have opposed this ban. To the communities, to the American families, to the Yemeni, Syrian, Libyan, Somalian, and Iranian families, we continue to fight for you and we see you. And to the Iranians, ما اعتراض شما را می‌بینیم و به حمایت و پشتبینی از شما هستیم. مبارزه می‌کنیم که حقوقتون پایمال نشه. ما همه با هم هستیم. Let's make sure that the next anniversary that brings us together is for the end of this terrible ban. It's now my honor to introduce Sheila Katz, CEO of the National Council of Jewish Women. Thank you.
Thank you, Mana. Good morning. My name is Sheila Katz, and I'm the CEO of the National Council of Jewish Women, a 125-year-old progressive social justice organization advocating on behalf of the most vulnerable women, children, and families in the United States and Israel. I'm proud to stand here today alongside so many friends. Over the past 3 years, this administration has waged relentless attacks against asylum seekers, refugees, and immigrants. With each new attack, they've tried to turn us against one another. And each time, we've come together in solidarity. They've tried to silence us, and we've raised our voices. Today, we sadly mark the 3-year anniversary of this administration banning travelers from Muslim countries, as we also challenge any expansion of this ban. Since the Muslim travel ban has been in effect, tens of thousands seeking to leave their home countries due to violence against women, conflict, terror, and human rights violations, as well as those simply seeking to study or visit family, have been prevented from entering the United States. Today, we are here to say loudly that we have not forgotten about the global Muslim community, and we will not stand idly by as this government's sanctioned religious bigotry continues. As Congressman Blumenthal and Vanita already shared, today, on the 75th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration and extermination camp, our call for justice must ring louder. As Jews, we know what it's like to wish others would respond while policies rooted in religious injustice are carried out. We know what it's like to seek haven and a better life in the United States. We know what it's like to be turned away out of fear and prejudice under the guise of security. The Torah instructs us to welcome and love the stranger. Va'ahavtem et hager. This is repeated 36 times, far more often than any other Jewish law, stressing the importance to Jewish values. The Muslim ban is an affront to these Jewish values and the U.S. Constitution. We cannot let another hour, day, week, or year pass until Congress enacts the No Ban Act, reversing the Muslim ban and stopping this administration from expanding these discriminatory laws. We must restore the basic principle that has guided America since its founding, that our nation is a home for all faiths and for those seeking a better life. National Council of Jewish Women has been working on issues of immigration for 125 years, and we will not remain silent right now as the most vulnerable among us are in need. To our Muslim friends, Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. We won't stop until Congress and this administration listen. And now I'm pleased to invite our next speaker up to the mic, Hillary Shelton, Director of the NAACP Washington Bureau and the Senior Vice President for Advocacy and Policy.
Thank you very much. As you mentioned, I'm Hillary Shelton, Director of the NAACP's Washington Bureau. I serve as Senior Vice President for Policy and Advocacy for the nation's oldest and largest grassroots-based civil rights organizations. We're membership units in every state in the United States, but we're still also on military bases in Italy, Germany, Korea, and Japan. So I bring you greetings on behalf of our NAACP members from all throughout. As we understand it, the president's upcoming expansion of this ban on people who may come into this country is, in fact, an expansion of his policies against and targeting black and brown people, as well as religious minorities. Those who are seeking the promise of freedom and religion and racial and ethnic diversity in the United States of America. Which begs the question, what is the Trump administration afraid of in the land of the free and the home of the brave? Why do so many of its policies result in keeping black and brown as well as other families of color apart? We are, after all, indeed a nation of immigrants and one of fairness and a belief in human rights for all. So why is the administration targeting people of racial, ethnic, and religious diversity for exclusion? We need to pass the No Ban Act, which has been introduced by Senator Coons and Congresswoman Chu, and which would require the president to prove an actual threat and provide evidence before implementing such an extreme ban excluding travelers of a certain racial, minority, or religious group. Racism and xenophobia do not count as evidence of potential threat. Thousands of families have already been torn apart because President Trump's discriminatory Muslim ban that does not make us safer. As a matter of fact, it makes us more vulnerable. It only makes our nation and our people and the policies appear more racist. Under the new rumored proposal, which would target and prohibit entry of potential travelers from several African nations, adding to the list Nigeria, Tanzania, Eritrea, and Sudan's spouses, parents, grandparents, children, siblings, friends, and even those that would want to marry those in our country and build families in the home of the free and the land of the brave. But the xenophobic ban is creating these challenges and problems and must be stopped. And that's why we must pass the No Ban Act now and eliminate racism from our national policies. It is now my absolute pleasure and honor to introduce Dana Harvey, an American citizen whose Syrian fiancé was banned from entering the United States because of the Syrian ban.
Good morning. My name is Dana Harvey, and I'm an optometrist with my eye doctor, the Mosaic location for anyone who needs an eye exam, except you'll only have until Friday to make that appointment. You see, because of the Muslim ban, my own fiancé is banned from traveling to me. And in just 6 days from now, I will be forced to leave my country indefinitely to establish residence with my fiancé across the world, in Lebanon, a country neither one of us are actual citizens of. I was born in Alexandria, Virginia. I'm a homeowner, a taxpayer, an American citizen, and the caretaker of my ill mother. I shouldn't have to leave my job and my entire life to be with family, but that's the reality for me, and the thousands of other American families are separated because of this cruel Muslim ban. I've always believed in using my medical expertise for humanitarian purposes. In 2010, I traveled to El Salvador to help people without access to eye care, and in 2016, I went on another humanitarian mission trip to Lebanon. It was there I met countless Syrian refugees struggling with access to food, water, education, and health care. It's also where I met the love of my life, Meshad, who also helps with the humanitarian cause. He's probably the most amazing human my heart has ever come into contact with. Meshad and his family are Syrians who were forced to migrate to Lebanon after violence reached their village when the Assad regime cracked down on Syria's innocent civilians. Initially, they were told they would be able to return after things calmed down, so they left everything they owned. That was 7 years ago. Meshad and I were engaged in early 2017, and I began the paperwork for the K-1 fiancé visa in November of 2017. We hired a lawyer who advised us on preparing a waiver package, which we did in the summer of 2018. The administration had promised that the Muslim ban would have a waiver process for family members of Americans. I'm an American citizen, he's my fiancé, what could go wrong? Meshad's interview was in February of 2019. The interviewer at the consulate in Beirut refused to even look at the package that we had spent months preparing. I even enlisted the help of my senator to inquire about our case, but that just returned a generic response from the consulate. This ban is cruel. I can no longer live apart from my fiancé, and I shouldn't have to. I want a waiver from the ban for my husband-to-be, but we cannot even get the government to consider our American family. Why? Because my fiancé is from Syria, nothing more. Without a waiver, this American family will have to be established in Lebanon, a country where my job prospects are bleak, where I'll be separated from my ill mother and the home I own and my job in Virginia. My employer has been gracious enough to give me a 2-month leave of absence to help with the transition, but our future plans are a blur, as I will have to travel back and forth every few months to work and help support my family and fulfill my obligations here. You can only imagine the multidimensional toll this will take on our finances and my physical and emotional health. We need to stop the Muslim ban immediately, and we certainly shouldn't expand it. Families like mine will be the ones who pay the price. And now it is my honor to introduce Farhana Kara, the Executive Director of Muslim Advocates. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for your patience. I'm the last speaker, and then we'll open the floor to questions. My name is Farhana Kara, and I'm the Executive Director of Muslim Advocates, a national civil rights organization that works in the courts, in the halls of power, and in communities to stop bigotry in its tracks. Exactly 3 years ago today, President Trump unleashed a wave of pain, fear, and chaos in airports and in communities across the country. By following through on his evil campaign promise to ban Muslims from entering the United States. As you just heard from Dana and Mana, that pain still reverberates today. Families have been torn apart. Right now in the United States, thousands of Americans are separated from their loved ones. Parents separated from their children, spouses separated from each other, grandparents unable to visit with their grandchildren. Many of these families have also spent countless hours and even money contacting embassies, lawyers, filling out paperwork, and waiting, just waiting for answers. And for 3 years now, these Americans have been separated from their loved ones. Why? For a simple reason. Because they're Muslim. And by expanding the Muslim ban, as the president has indicated his desire to do so, he will inflict pain on thousands of more Americans and their families. And for what? All so that the president can score cheap political points and distract the country from his personal scandals and from the other many serious challenges facing our country today. We have to stop this naked, cruel hate. But thankfully, we know how to do it. The No Ban Act will end the Muslim ban. It will end any attempt to expand the Muslim ban, and it will prevent this president or any future president from trying to enact a discriminatory ban again that targets people because of their faith or where they come from. And you know what? We are so close to the finish line. With today's announcement by Speaker Pelosi, we are taking an important step forward. And this progress in the fight against the Muslim ban would not have been possible without the tireless and incredible commitment and leadership of our congressional leaders. Senator Coons, Congresswoman Chu, Representatives Nadler, Lofgren, Jayapal, Carson, Umar, Tlaib, and Rose. These champions and our other sponsors in Congress have been absolutely crucial to the movement on this bill, as well as our allies in the faith, civil rights, and affected communities. Right now, the No Ban Act has 214 co-sponsors in the House, and very soon the House will take up this bill in the Judiciary Committee, and very soon on the House floor. All we need is that vote. So if you are hearing this now, I have just one request for you: to contact your member of Congress and urge them for speedy passage of the No Ban Act. Thank you so very much.